to deal with that is partially because of a backlash from, if I remember correctly, part of the response to the third act battle between Superman and Zod in Man of Steel, where Metropolis just gets absolutely wrecked, and there's that sort of in movie but also in reality question of, okay, Superman, yeah, he defeated the bad guy, but the city he loves just got completely and utterly wrecked as a result.
Yeah.
So what now? And I know you see it in the comic books, and it comes in later in the movies with the Damage Control Organization in Marvel.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thing that they reference later on in Spider-Man.
Correct.
Like, I know there was a plan at some point to create a Damage Control television series.
Huh. I think you're right. I remember seeing that for a while, and
yeah.
I know that there was kind of a lot of hype around the idea, but I think it ended up not really going anywhere.
No, it really didn't. And I think that the series. Did you ever watch the series Powerless? That sort of DC, The Office thing.
I did. It wasn't that great, honestly.
It wasn't that great, but here's what I will say about it. That show. Did you ever watch that?
No, I did not get a chance to watch that.
If nothing else, like later, look up on YouTube just the opening sequence, the opening credits music, because that has one of the greatest musical gags almost ever for me. Like, the first time I watched that show, like, watching the credit sequence at the beginning made me laugh so much just because of the way they use the music in it. It's a lot of fun. But I think that instead of that show, I would love to have had a Damage Control show as a sort of ground level sort of man on the street's eye view of the Marvel universe and what it means for like people, for normal people to have these like crazy powerful beings flying around their city all the time and like knocking over buildings occasionally.
See, that would actually be interesting because I don't know if you've seen Luke Cage, either one of you.
Yeah.
But they touched that. Right, so they touched that with the one gentleman who's on the street. He's trying to sell these tapes of like, oh, here's the big black man. Like, this guy's for us. Like, trying to. There's the pros of that, and then you also have the cons from some of the political leaders within their city as well. So to bring that up on a larger scale would actually be very interesting because you could have individual accounts of these random nobodies, and to see that incorporated, I should say, into everyday life, because they did that with the radio. They do that with a couple of rappers that they get on there as well. So that'd be interesting how pop culture responds to it as well.
Yeah, I think that would be super fascinating, and maybe you could even frame it in the terms of like individual people's like stories and how they're intersecting with the heroes and all that stuff. But anyway. Sorry, you were probably saying something, Aaron, about how the Damage Control comes in. I just totally hijacked that.
No, that's perfectly okay. Even because you're right in your comment about they kind of bring in Damage Control for Spider-Man, and not to get into that too much, but a lot of the villainy in Spider-Man stems from things that are going on more the ground level after some of the big kind of climactic battles in the film universe so far. And you've got a team on the ground that's trying to help clean up what's happened, and then and profit from it. And Damage Control then kind of comes in with a cease and desist and all that. So you have some of that in the movies now, but not nearly to the degree like Daniel was saying with Luke Cage, or even, if I remember correctly, actually the pilot episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. from 4 or 5 years ago, when Phil Coulson has that very kind of touching, grounded, emotional discussion with Mike Peterson at the end of the pilot, where he basically kind of admits, I am the everyman perspective in this universe. I'm the one that has, been hanging out with, tech titans and super soldiers and gods that fly, and we fought monsters, and, I died because of it. And then, now I'm back. And so you have some of that, but nowhere near to the degree that they tried to, comically put some of that forward in a DC comic show like Powerless. And, I think even with Powerless, the way it was originally set to be was it was like an insurance company that was essentially selling insurance against damage created by like superhero and supervillain battles, and then that concept didn't go over, and so they changed it into what it was with the whole Wayne Tech thing, and
which
it was whatever it was.
At the end of that first episode, I loved that take on it. Absolutely, how essentially this is all like a sub rosa R&D for all of Batman's tech.
Right.
That's cool.
Yeah, I think that's hilarious. So back to what I said a minute ago about the collateral damage thing, I really did appreciate how Cap addressed that question when he was talking to Scarlet Witch after the incident, and when he said, if you don't find a way to live with basically the fact of collateral damage, then there's a lot of people who aren't going to get saved because of your indecision or your hesitance to act because something bad might happen. Because something bad is already happening. And it's sort of just another iteration of the great power, great responsibility axiom of like you have the ability to make a difference here. It's your responsibility to, even if it doesn't go exactly the way you're hoping it does.
Right.
Well, I mean, there's even to go even a little bit further back, there's that line from Top Gun in the mid-'80s about how when you're up there, you don't think, because if you think, you're dead, because that's how fast things are happening.
Yeah. Right. Well, and that's absolutely the situation that was portrayed in the film of basically she saved Captain America's life and did the best that she could, and it went a little sideways, and even. Yeah, I know.
There's still variances that just can't be controlled within the universe, but that's what makes it that more intricate. That's what makes it that's what makes it good. That's what causes more content to be created too. Yeah, it's important.
The dramatic driving force there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And it shows you. It's one of those things that for a lot of these characters, it shows you that they're human, or at least they have human sides and human elements, because there are certain characters, like Superman, that in a lot of ways is really hard to relate to him in terms of kind of like the elevated kind of Christ Messiah figure that he is,
right,
and larger than life, and the closest that Marvel tends to get to that is something like Cap, like the super soldier. But I think they've done a really good job in the MCU of setting that up where there's so much humanity to him that you can still relate with aspects of where he is and what he's dealing with.
Right, and that's always been a distinction between Marvel and DC, and I've probably mentioned this on the podcast at least a couple of times already, where DC characters kind of tend to be these very, very big and larger than life and sort of epic figures, whereas the Marvel characters tend to be a little bit more grounded and relatable in terms not just of their powers, but also in terms of the kind of stories that we're telling about them. Right. Because so much of, for instance, Spider-Man, so much of Spider-Man's stories are just about him, like, trying somehow to have, like, any kind of life while he balances the responsibility of having these powers. And a lot of what's going on in those stories, whether he's in costume or not, stems from his own personal life. Whereas, you know, with Superman or Green Lantern or you know, a lot of these other sort of really like much bigger kind of characters in DC, it's not as much of that.
Yeah. No, there's not, because a lot of the DC characters, the way I like to think about it is they're much more mythological in the sense that it's very easy to pair them up with characters from, say, the Greek pantheon, right?
Right. Yeah. Right.
You know that Superman is Zeus, and Aquaman's Poseidon, and the Flash is Hermes, and Diana is Diana, and you know, and she's the goddess of wisdom, and she's got a little bit of kind of like an Aphrodite angle as well.
True.
Even though in DC Comics, Aphrodite is her own kind of Greek mythological character that that Wonder Woman interacts with, and and so you've got more of that kind of mythological side to the DC thing, and not that Marvel isn't mythological in its own way.
Absolutely,
it is, but it's not necessarily as direct of a pull from like outside established mythologies as say DC might be.
Right. Yeah, when I a couple episodes ago when I talked about Age of Ultron, I mentioned, and I'm sure you guys are both familiar with the end credits sequence of that film, yes, and the way that it literally sort of portrays the heroes in a very sort of mythological way in like the marble sculpture, just like a lot of these sort of Greek gods and heroes and so on. But as I was watching this movie again, like there are so many just great moments. And something that just made me laugh is when they're having the fight when Cap and Bucky are sort of fighting each other and all fighting the German sort of SWAT team there in his apartment building. I was astounded at this incredible portrayal of German precision, that they were unerringly able to only target Bucky's metal arm.
Right.
Oh. Wow. Yeah.
I didn't even think about that, actually. No, I literally
every time they shoot at him, like it either stops it with his hand or he's got his arm in front of his face. I was like, man, that is some pretty intense sharpshooting that these guys have got going on here. That's props to you guys. That's amazing.
Certainly
maybe there was some sort of like,
it's reverse Stormtrooper logic, right?
Magnetism that just drew them to it. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think it's worth overthinking too much. It's just
but it is
probably not.
Yeah, but the other thing that was cool about that sequence that I really enjoyed was when Bucky's running across the roof and you have this like shadow that swoops over him, like it's a great misdirect because you're expecting Sam,
right?
And then all of a sudden, no, it's Black Panther, and that was dope.
That was very dope.
Yeah. It's Black Panther's introduction. I mean, both. I think for T'Challa being present for his father's speech, and then doing everything he could at the last minute to save his father's life, and failing, and then seeing, Black Panther with the intro that we got for him was just. Because I think even the directors in the commentary, they talked about there was a question of how exactly do we intro this character that everybody's been waiting for without his own film to set him up. And when I saw Civil War for the very first time, I never felt like anything was out of place. I mean, maybe part of that is because I knew who the character was and I had a basic understanding of him, having encountered him in other media over the years, but it didn't feel like it was lacking anything.
I agree.
What's interesting to me as I think about the story that this movie is telling, like, obviously, like, revenge stories are a dime a dozen, but this is a very, very particular type of There's a bunch of different